So, Rob, how do you think about hiring your first sales leader and transitioning yourself out of purely founder-led sales?
Really what you want to do is just document everything that you do. And the best way of doing that is through Loom videos.
Rob Hoffman, CEO and co-founder of Contact Studios.
In reality, people are really good at pattern matching. So if I just film a video of myself, it's just like a 20-minute, no narration video of me preparing for a sales call. I could then take that and hand it over to a salesperson who I'm going to be hiring. If I give them like 3 of those, let's say, or the more the better, they're going to understand, well, exactly how I prepare for a sales call. And they can now pattern match, and they could probably do it at 90% of the effectiveness of what I'm doing. I think it's such a hack to remove the pressure of filming the perfect training resource. And if you make mistakes, screw it. You don't have to have the perfect clean cut. Really, it's just about giving somebody else as much context as possible as to what you do on a daily basis.
Rob, bienvenido a Founders y Empanadas. How are you doing, my man?
Muchas gracias, parcero. I'm doing good. I like that you call me Rob, because as you know, that's kind of what my name ends up being in Colombia, because Rob is just a very non-common one-syllable name.
Roberto.
Roberto. And so I'm doing a little empanada unboxing, but I think I got some Argentinian style empanadas, which are great, by the way.
Very nice, very nice. I'm rocking with the coco rollo from Medellin.
I'm jealous. Those are the best empanadas probably of all time. So trying not to be too jealous here, but
10,000 calories in here, enough for the full day ahead. I'm sitting at my laptop. Awesome, man. So, Rob, we first met over a year and a half ago through the Hampton Group. I remember that, up until that point, I really stayed away from hanging out with North Americans in Medellin. I associated most Americans and Canadians with coming to Medellin for the wrong reasons of, what they saw on Narcos. But you really exposed me to the local entrepreneur network, and I'm forever thankful to you for that. And also really appreciate you as a founder and what you've done at Contact Studios. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the origin story of how you went from being a writer to starting Contact Studios.
Oh man, how much time do we got here? So it's kind of a funny story. And before I realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I actually thought that I wanted to be a writer. And specifically, I thought I wanted to be a journalist. Eventually, I kind of fell out of love with journalism and writing. But it was kind of a long road to get from that to wanting to be an entrepreneur. Essentially, what happened was I was working as a writer for a startup, and the startup ended up failing, and everyone got fired. Kind of on there was 40 people that just all got let go on one day. And that was really exciting for me because it meant that I no longer had to be in Toronto. And I was miserable in Toronto. So I got to basically move back to Medellin. And that's all I really wanted out of life, is just to be in Medellin. And my goal was to build a business essentially for no other reason, but to give me the flexibility to live where I wanted to live. And so what ended up happening was I moved to Medellin with my life savings. I think it was $10,000 or something, and tried to, over the course of about a year, build up a business, really just to make enough money to support myself. And what happened is, after almost a year, I totally failed. I did not succeed. I was making practically $0. So, as coincidence would have it, the startup that fired me, probably 9 months prior, was starting to get their feet under them again and build from the ground up. And because I was the best writer at that company, they reached back out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to join us again as a writer?" And I said, "Hell yes, I do, because I basically need money." And so I joined the company again in Medellin, working remotely. But this time I didn't see myself as a writer. I saw myself as an entrepreneur. And so I started to notice opportunities within that company, within that startup, of missed revenue opportunities, things that I thought the company should be doing that would allow it to grow much bigger and much faster. And I started to basically take leadership within that company. I made a 30-page slide deck to present all of the revenue opportunities I saw. I presented it to the entire company, and everyone started applauding after. It was kind of funny, and I think the CEO was like a little bit speechless. And so basically, through that process of finding these opportunities and saying to the CEO, hey, why don't you let me try to execute on some of these things? Why don't you let me sell? I don't think he saw me as a salesperson. He saw me as a writer. So it took a while to convince him. But the first day that I started to sell for the company, I closed a $13,000 deal, like day one. And he was kind of like, okay, like this guy actually knows what he's doing. And then from there, I just kept closing deals. I started to organize a team around me, just show leadership within the company. I sold $500,000 that year just myself and grew the company pretty quickly. The next year, I sold $1 million of marketing campaigns just myself, and basically helped to grow that company 100% year over year for 2 consecutive years. I went from writer to head of content to chief operating officer, and basically learned everything that I know about business from there, and used that knowledge to basically help build my own business, Contact Studios. And so applying what I learned into Contact Studios, we also started to grow. And eventually, it didn't make sense to try to run 2 companies at once. And I quit the other startup and went all in on Contact Studios.
Amazing. And walk me through that first sale you made with Contact Studios, with your original company. How were you able to convince the founder that you were the right person for this? And what was the sales cycle like?
I think I just said like, hey, I know how to sell. I actually have a sales experience. I think you need help. Why don't you let me do it? Why don't you let me just try to sell? I was just cold emailing. I was cold emailing people, trying to just get calls set up a call, was able to close the deal. But the difficult part was, at this point, I was living in an area of Medellin that was kind of one of the less economically developed areas of the city, to put it diplomatically. Maybe to illustrate that point more, whenever I'd get in a taxi and try to go home to where I lived, the taxi driver would ask, are you sure? And they would probably say, you shouldn't go there. And I would say, well, I live there. And also, like, I was paying $70 a month for rent. That also paints a picture for what this place kind of looked like. It's kind of like a bit of a favela, I think is a good term for it. So when I was doing sales, one of my big challenges was I couldn't find a way to point my computer in a direction that would make me look like a legitimate business person, because behind me you just have unfinished concrete walls. It looks like I'm living in a favela. And I just imagine people saying, hey, so you are telling me you can make me all this money, so why are you living in a slum? And so what I would do is, I had this Superman poster that it was the only thing on the wall that looked halfway legitimate as a decoration. And so I'd take this stupid Superman poster and put it behind me. And that was like my good luck charm for closing deals. And I guess it worked, because again, that year I went on to close $500,000 worth of deals. And the rest is history.
I loved visiting your old barrio in Manrique when we went there for Alborada. So for our listeners, December 1st in Medellin, the entire city blows up with fireworks all over the place. And there's no better spot than Rob's old barrio overseeing the whole city. Rob, do you have any crazy stories about, taking sales calls from there and someone coming in uninvited, or any kind of funny setups that you ran into?
Well, I think one of the main challenges, as you know, especially in these neighborhoods in Medellin, you have a lot of noise. So my next door neighbors were actually the neighborhood gang. It was a trap house essentially. And so every time I'd walk into my house, there'd be like 20 dudes standing outside, smoking weed, listening to loud music, looking intense for the most part. And they would have parties, a few times a week where they'd be partying until 5 a.m. with loud music. And their house is right above where we lived. And the way the houses in that neighborhood look is they're kind of stacked on top of each other. So they were looking down on our patio. So they'd be having parties until 5 a.m. I'd wake up in the morning and there'd be like little empty baggies of like used Coke and 2C baggies all over my patio, which is kind of intense. You can't exactly knock on their door and tell them to knock it off because, it's literally, these are gangsters. And so that was a really big challenge, mainly because lack of sleep or just them playing loud music at inconvenient times a day. Or sometimes it wasn't them at all. It was just, the local guy who comes by selling mazamorra or selling aguacates. So he's coming by, aguacate, mazamorra, or whatever. And you're on a sales call and you just hear this guy selling avocados and you have to just roll with it. Like, I think that sales, one tip I can give to anyone who's looking to get better as a salesperson is I really think that 90% of it is making the other person feel comfortable and making them feel good, right? And so showing up with a positive attitude, a smile, and showing this person that, hey, if you invest your money with me, I'm going to take that very seriously. And I am just a person just like you are, and I'm trustworthy. And so, some people feel like they need to be rigid on sales calls and project like such a professional kind of vibe. But I find that sometimes when things happen like that, the avocado guy is coming by, just make a joke of it. Like, yeah, I'm living here in Colombia. I love it. It's an amazing place. But the funny thing, right? It's such an amazing place that I don't even have to go to the store to get my avocados. The guy just comes right by. So I don't know. You say silly things like that, and you can turn a negative into a positive.
I swear my neighborhood avocado guy has access to my Google Calendar, and he perfectly times up his avocado walks whenever I have a client call. Rob, one part of sales that I think is really underappreciated is the sale of recruitments and forming that initial core team. I'd love if you could walk me through how you formed the initial core team of Contact Studios and grew from there, from the recruitment standpoint.
Yeah, so recruiting is definitely one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest bottlenecks for any company. And I think one mistake that people make is they try to come up with some dream that they need to sell. Like, oh, we're going to change the world in this way and that way. Really, most people just want to work for somebody who they see as legitimate and trustworthy, inspiring. And it doesn't need to be that your company is going to change the world. It just might be, hey, we're building something pretty interesting, pretty cool. We're starting here. We're on a journey to get from where we are to, from A to B. And we want you to come along for the ride. It's going to be a good place to work. It's exciting because, again, like, we're building something together. And maybe it's not going to change the world, but we're making daily progress towards a goal. And I think for most people, that's really all they want. A good place to work is, if you come in every day and you do your job well, you're going to make progress, ideally on a weekly or monthly basis, towards a goal, and you can feel that progress and you can see the growth. And that's really exciting to people. So I think when it comes to recruiting, again, it's like, just be genuine, and you have to be kind of energetic and inspiring. Like, of course, nobody wants to work for somebody who's just monotone and boring. So I think, it's maybe not as complicated as people make it seem. It's like, just be your genuine self, but add some showmanship in there. Like, I think showmanship is such an underappreciated quality. And, even you just getting on a call with somebody and getting excited and being a bit charismatic and injecting some energy into the conversation, that goes a long way. And you'd be surprised about how many people don't do that. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Rob, I'd love to transition into founder-led sales. But before we do that, I think we need to hit round 2 of empanadas. You got another one in there, right?
Oh, I got another one.
Oh, okay. You're already double fisting them. I like it. Awesome. So Rob, with your background as a writer, how has that influenced your sales approach? Can you share an experience where your content expertise became an emotional driver in closing a deal?
So I think being a writer is actually super advantageous in business and in sales for many reasons. But one area in particular is knowing how to do proper research. So when you're going into a sales call, I think one mistake that people make is not properly taking the time to do research of the prospect before they get on the call. And the prospect can feel that. It makes them feel like they're just another number. So really ideally what you want to do is you want to kind of put your almost investigative journalistic hat on before a sales call and try to figure out what's the story behind this company, the person who I'm talking to, what's their story, maybe where do they go to university, maybe what are some of their hobbies that you can bring up on the call, what's the trajectory of the company, maybe some interesting things that you can say on the call to signal that you've actually done your homework and you're not just treating them like another number. So that's probably the number one area where I think writing comes in handy, is just being able to be more investigative, do a bit more research before getting on a call. And it makes the world of difference. People can really tell when you're showing up prepared versus unprepared and you're kind of just winging it.
I love the story you shared with me once of you were pitching dribble and showed up with actual basketball and just rocking it out from the beginning.
That's what I'm saying is like showmanship, I think, goes a long way. So I was pitching a company where their logo is a basketball. And so I show up to the call with like a basketball beside me and I'm kind of spinning it. And it's just like a small detail that shows that you care. Funnier one might be we did a sales call with a company and their logo is like a green mustache. So I literally went and found like some green, what's it called? Like poster board? What do you call that stuff? It's like
cardboard. Yep.
Cardboard. I found like green, like cardboard or whatever you call it. And I cut a green mustache out and like put it on a stick. And so I showed up to the call with this like green mustache on and they thought it was hilarious. It got everyone laughing. And again, it just shows that we're willing to go the extra mile. We put a little bit of showmanship in there. Now they remember us out of the other 5 agencies that they've talked to. And we've shown that, hey, we're serious about you and working with you and your business.
I love that. And Rob, you're leading sales at your company. How do you manage the emotional toll of juggling sales responsibilities with other aspects of running the actual company? Can you share an example where this balancing act was particularly difficult?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult because sales is so emotionally taxing. Such an emotional labor. You know what I find is like really helpful, especially because sales is such like a social thing. Like you really have to be turned on, put your best foot forward kind of. It's like, again, it's like very emotional. So I think just creating space where you can kind of have time to yourself. For me, like I love just going to the park and carving out like an hour of my day that's like non-negotiable where I'm going to just sit, maybe watch the sunset, read a book and just have like me time. I find that's pretty helpful. So I don't know if that's like the best tip in the world. That's kind of just what I do. It's kind of simple.
Totally. No, you gotta sit on the bench, get some empanadas in.
Oh, this is a different kind of empanada. This is like some, what do we got here? Some like spicy beef or something?
Spicy, okay. Picante.
Well,
Don't have many of those in Colombia.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Colombia is not known for its spices, that's for sure.
Awesome, Rob. And I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into, yeah, just how you maintain your mental health managing sales. Can you walk me through any other tips you have for just managing the emotional roller coaster that comes with hearing a lot of no's or a lot of getting ghosted throughout the course of a month?
Part of it I think is really just like realizing that the hardest part about sales is just dealing with a ton of no's. And the way I think about it, it's almost like this life hack where the job itself is really not that hard. You don't have to go to university or like learn anything technical to start doing sales. Like I know that I didn't. And so it's kind of this life hack where if you just say, I'm just going to kind of put this mental armor on and be okay with having people say no to me, or, like just being okay with rejection, then you can build a great business. You can make a ton of money. There's tons of opportunities. If you know how to sell and you're able to sell, you're never going to struggle in your life, because it's just such like a high value skill that, so I think for me, like just reframing it and going, wow, it's not really that the thing itself is that difficult. The hard thing is really just dealing with rejection. But like, it's not actually that difficult of a thing. It's not the same as learning how to speak a new language or learning how to code, where it's like, wow, I actually need to spend time studying this. It's like really just, I don't know, like, just summoning some like courage to go out there and get rejected over and over again. So I think just reframing it or realizing that is kind of helpful. And you start to be like, wow, this is really a life hack, and it can allow you to get ahead in life if you're somebody who doesn't have any specialized skills. Other than that, like, what do I do to handle the rejection? Or like nothing in particular. Honestly, I think it's just the mental framing of it.
I love that. Yeah. If you're not selling throughout the day, you're being sold to.
Yeah, that's true. That is fair. And I think that it's like sometimes as a Canadian, selling is, all my American friends are so good at selling. Like, I don't know, like you as an example, maybe it comes more naturally to you, because I find like all my American friends are so like energetic and optimistic and outgoing. And naturally, like my inclination is to be a little bit more self-deprecating or whatever. And so I don't know, I just found that funny, but it's true that like, either you're consuming content or you're creating it, either you're selling or you're being sold to. Like, I think that applies in so many areas of life and business.
Yeah. Rob, let's talk a little bit more about content. I know you're very active on LinkedIn, but how do you use your content background to help with sales?
Well, I think content is kind of everything these days, mainly because people want to see that you are active on social platforms like LinkedIn, as an example, before they buy from you. I think that buyers are more sophisticated than they've ever been. They basically just do a ton more research before making a final decision. And so if you have no content out there, you're not putting a unique point of view out into the world, you're not presenting yourself as a legitimate person on platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter, the people are just going to have a lot less trust for you. So for us, like, content is kind of front and center, not just as the way we get leads, but also as the way that we build trust with people who, when I get on sales calls, they'll say, hey, like, I'm talking to you because I saw your content, I've followed it for a long time, and now I kind of feel familiar. It's almost like they're not just meeting me for the first time. It's almost as if they already know me. So yeah, it's almost just like a great way to warm up your leads before you even talk to them.
Love that. So I got a twofold question for you. What advice would you give to content creators to get better at sales? And what advice would you give to salespeople to get better at content creation?
I think sales, again, there's tons of different strategies that you can learn, like, how to create urgency, or, stupid shit like say the person's name a lot because they like to hear that. Again, like, really, it's just showing up, being energetic, knowing what you're talking about. And a lot of that comes through repetition. So one thing I would say is, like, if you are a creator and you want to get better at sales, then like number one, practice makes perfect. But that's just like such a not useful thing. I'm trying to think of something more useful that people can actually apply. Here's what I think, okay? The best salespeople ask a lot of questions. So create a document where you have like a little bit of a script for the opening that you're going to give. You're not always going to follow that every single time, but it at least just makes you feel more comfortable going into a call and knowing roughly what you're going to say for the opening. After that, it's just a lot of asking questions. And that takes the pressure massively off of you because your job is pretty simple. You're just kind of sitting there. You're like a doctor diagnosing a patient by asking questions. And now all of a sudden it's like you've reframed. It's almost like sales. People think it's like an extroverted thing, but the more that you can get the other person talking, actually the better. And so you almost have to flex that more like that skill of, well, I want to talk as little as possible. I just want to learn about this person and understand like their business, their challenges and whatnot. And that makes it so much easier. It takes the pressure off. You're just asking questions. You're letting them do a lot of the talking. So when I go into a sales call, I have a document with a ton of questions on it. And I just do a little bit of an intro so they can understand who we are and what we do. And then I just try to learn as much as I can about their company. Huge hack, like question-based selling is just a huge, huge hack at, sorry, this bad boy is spicy. It's probably going to be content that speaks to some of the things you say on sales calls anyways. So maybe on a sales call, on the proposal call, you're talking about your product or your service, and you're breaking down like what makes this thing valuable. What are maybe some case studies? Well, those case studies, each one of those case studies can be its own unique piece of content. Every single talking point and value prop that you have that you're talking about on a sales call, that can be a unique piece of content. So I would say just watch one of your sales calls back. And from there, you could probably get like 20 ideas of different pieces of content that you could then turn into a LinkedIn post or a Twitter post.
So Rob, how do you think about hiring your first sales leader and transitioning yourself out of purely founder-led sales?
Well, I think to transition yourself out of your role, really what you want to do is just document everything that you do. And the best way of doing that is through Loom videos, which is really, really simple. And I think that there's a good tip that I learned actually from I think it's the CEO of a company called Levels Health. Do you know them?
Familiar with them, yep.
They're really big on just creating Loom videos for like everything. And it's not just, I think when people think about creating Loom videos that are going to serve as training resources in the future, they think a lot about, I need to be narrating everything that I'm doing. It needs to be perfect. I can't make any mistakes. In reality, people are really good at pattern matching. So if I just film a video of myself, it's just like a 20-minute, no narration video of me preparing for a sales call. I could then take that and hand it over to, a salesperson who I'm going to be hiring. And if I give them like 3 of those, let's say, or like 5 of those, the more the better. They're going to understand, well, exactly how I prepare for a sales call. And they can now pattern match, and they could probably do it at 90% of the effectiveness of what I'm doing, right? And so I think it's such a hack to remove the pressure of filming the perfect training resource and just turn on the camera and record. And if you make mistakes, like, screw it. Doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to have the perfect clean cut training resource that has no mistakes in it. Really, it's like just about giving somebody else as much context as possible as to what you do on a daily basis. So we try to create like a repository of Loom videos, and we have it in our Notion wiki for everything. So sales calls that I've done, how do I prepare for a sales call, the difference between a discovery call and a proposal call, how do we know if a lead is qualified, How do we know if we want to work with somebody or if they're a bad fit? Again, really, like the best thing that you could possibly do if you're going to be hiring somebody to take over your job as a sales leader is to have them sit beside you for like a few weeks and just observe and kind of soak it all up like a sponge. Obviously, that's not really practical. So the next best thing, again, is just recording as much as possible and creating like an organized repository of these videos.
I love that. I'm a Loom power user myself, and it applies to other roles as well. We recommend all of our clients that have a virtual assistant with new work to just Loom record themselves the entire day doing all your tasks, and they're always surprised by when they share these Loom recordings of what their virtual assistant can take off of their plate from just walking through what they're doing throughout a full day.
Yeah, you don't expect it, but like people are just so good at like watching something and pattern matching. Like you got to give people more credit, and so it's such a hack. Yeah, I think just like record everything. The more, the better.
Awesome. And Rob, what's a strongly held belief or opinion that you have that 99% of people would disagree with?
I don't know. I think like I kind of touched on it before, where it's like people maybe overcomplicate sales a little bit. And I think there's so many sales training that they're trying to get you to do kind of unnatural stuff, like saying their name a million times, like, "Hey, Josh, how are you doing, Josh? So tell me about your business, Josh." And it's like, okay, you can say somebody's name a few times if it feels natural to you. But if you're coming across as just like a robotic salesperson who went and took like some Wolf of Wall Street training and now you're regurgitating it, like you're not going to be trustworthy. People just want to work with people who they trust and who they like. And I think that your job as a salesperson is just to make the other person feel like okay. It's not so much about, oh, you have to use this intonation or say their name like 7 times in every 20-minute period. You know what I mean? Like, sure, some of that stuff can work, but I just think that that's like 95% of it is just empathizing and like being a genuine kind of trustworthy person. So what does that look like? It looks like when they come on the call, have a smile, like just smile at them. It means have some showmanship, like don't be a robot. Say something kind of funny, humanize it. I say funny, stupid stuff all the time. Like I'll make references to gangster rap, or again, like I'll show up to the call and I made that like mustache that I put, like it was like that green mustache that I told you about earlier, and because that's what the prospect's logo was, and that's so silly. Like, so yeah, I think that people want to work with people that they like, and so try to make them laugh. That's going to be, if you can make them laugh, that's going to go so much further than, "Hey, Josh, how are you doing, Josh? Just so you know, like, you have to make a decision in a week, and I'm creating this like false sense of urgency," and like all these other tips and tricks that like these sales training people are going to try to get you to do. So yeah, that's what I'd say is like that stuff feels kind of like it can work, but that's just like 5%. 95% of it is just being a likable person.
Totally. Yeah, I'd say on my end, a strongly held belief that 99% of people disagree with is that Milo chocolate with empanada is a pretty fire combination. You gotta try it out.
That's savage, honestly, right there.
Have you tried the Colombian cheese in hot chocolate?
Yo, they mix everything in Colombia. It's crazy. Like, yeah, I've tried the cheese and chocolate. There's a lot of cheese mixture, like cheese and ice cream. Have you had that?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Awesome. So good. Unexpectedly amazing.
Awesome, Rob. And hey, what's your favorite book right now and why?
Well, my favorite book of all time is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's by Ben Horowitz. And going back to like, I think 95% of life again is just being like likable and putting some like showmanship into things. The book not only is very informational, so you learn a lot of great lessons about how to build a company, how to hire a sales leader, how to do all these things that most founders want to know. But he'll do funny things, like every chapter starts with a rap quote, because he also like loves gangster rap. Or he'll just tell very honest, funny stories about his life and about his journey of business that they kind of catch you off guard because they're just so honest. And so I like that too, because you can learn lessons in more of a narrative format. Sometimes dense business books, like ones that are a bit more of kind of like textbook style, like what's the one, like Scale Up. Those are great, but I just think that sometimes you learn a lot more from like a narrative style book where the lesson is kind of wrapped up in a story. So The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz is my favorite business book.
Awesome. Rob, where can people find you online?
Online, I think my LinkedIn handle is just Rob Hoffman, and that's probably the best place, is just on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Well, Rob, thank you so much for joining Founders and Empanadas and braving through the picante carne asada one. And can't wait to have you back here in Medellin.
Can't wait to be back. Every time I leave Medellin, I'm always reminded of like why I want to continue to live there. So can't wait to see you back there again soon.
Salud.
Salud.